Good evening. Welcome to the Transportation and Parking Commission meeting for Monday, May 24th, 2010. We'll start with the agenda, please.
Item 1 is regular business agenda. Item 1A is roll call. Commissioner Fouad?
Here.
Commissioner Sahakian? Commissioner Yakubian?
Here.
Commissioner Weisman?
Here.
Chairperson Welch?
Here. Next item, please.
Item 1B is flag salute. Chairperson Welch?
Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item.
Item 2 is posting of agenda. The agenda for the Monday, May 24th, 2010 regular meeting of the Glendale Transportation and Parking Commission was posted by Friday, May 21st, 2010 before 5:30 p.m. on the bulletin board outside of City Hall.
Okay. Thank you. Next item.
Item 3 is approval of minutes. Item 3A, April 26, 2010, meeting approval of minutes.
Okay. I noticed just one small thing on the last page. It said had bike 2 month. I think it was just bike month was the reference for that. So, any other comments on the minutes? You found the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Can somebody
I thought it was
move?
adjourned on purpose.
Can somebody move that we accept the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second, please. Somebody.
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you. Next item.
Item 4 is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision.
Are there any cards? Because I've got one for an item, but
Just
nothing.
that for now.
Okay. I have no cards, so is somebody going to be bringing a card? Okay. Okay, first speaker, Patrick Masihi.
Members of the Transportation and Parking Commission, I do have a presentation, and I see that your system is already up. If you don't mind, I can go after the bike lane presentation.
How long is your presentation?
It's a 5-minute, but I do have pictures that I want to show you. So if that can be accommodated right now, I can go ahead and give you
what is it you're going to be presenting on?
transportation parking issues for our neighborhood.
Is it okay? Can we throw it in there real quick? Okay.
As I said, I can wait until tonight's presentation gets done. Then
I just as
afterwards-
soon get it over with so
Okay.
we can have a free-flowing discussion later. Can you do a view as slideshow thing?
Members of the Transportation and Parking Commission, my name is Patrick Massey. I'm here with our Vice President, Joylene Taylor, from the Planconey States Homeowners Association tonight. The reason why we're appearing in front of you today is because of close to 2 years of traffic and transportation issues in our neighborhood. The Planconey States is located between the 134 freeway, Newby, Glen Oaks, all the way to Concord. And our neighborhood has been hit left and right with different projects. I'm sure you're aware of what's happening to our neighborhood with the flyover project. We recently had a at-grade crossing put in, and there's some work on Glen Oaks currently that is going on. So we've been hit from every direction. And unfortunately, based on our requests in the past 6 months with Jano Bagdanian to put up some traffic calming measures, we have been rejected numerous times, and that's why we felt compelled to appear in front of you and ask for your support for some traffic calming issues for our neighborhood. And as I said, for the past couple of years, we've been going through a great deal. The first slide that you're seeing right now is actually the view from Norton Avenue, showing you the crossing in the background, the island that is located right across Planconey, which comes all the way to Norton. And this is what we have to deal with on a daily basis in terms of the traffic movement in our neighborhood, let alone traffic and parking violations that happen on a regular basis with an auto body shop that we have at the end of Norton Avenue. Our request originally to Jano Bagdanian was to have a no left-hand turn sign into Norton from 4 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., except for local traffic. These signs are actually in current use throughout LA County, especially near studios like Universal Studios, and there's no precedence being set by having these signs and restricting traffic. LA does it, so do some areas of Orange County. It's by the request of certain streets that are near thoroughfares and are trying to protect their quality of life. The reason why we're asking for this is because once that signal goes on, the actual train crossing signal, all the lights turn red. Traffic builds up all the way to Grandview, and people feel pressured to cut through Norton Avenue, which is the only street available to them, all the way to Glen Oaks to hit the other routes that they go through. So as a result, Norton Avenue has seen a huge jump in traffic after the crossing was put in. So unfortunately, the answer we've been getting back from city staff is, well, you know what, there's construction going on San Fernando Road, and that's the main reason. Well, actually, that's not the main reason. The main reason is a crossing. And during the afternoon hours, because of the train routes, we're seeing that crossing, closed on a regular basis. The red light turns on, which is, by the way, state and federal law. You cannot have traffic moving in and out once the crossing arms come down. And as a result, traffic builds up. Norton Avenue becomes a victim. So our request was rejected. That's why we appear in front of you for that particular reason. One more. As you can see, on the tip of that island, there is space for a no left-hand turn sign that can easily be placed there. It's a $150 fee for the construction or the order of this particular sign. This is what we call the war zone currently, which is Fairmont Avenue. This picture was taken from Concord looking into Fairmont. Fairmont Avenue folks have been complaining for many years, especially after the flyover project started. What happens in the morning hours is people are rushing to the freeway on-ramp from Concord. There is no speed limit sign, and all we're asking is for a speed limit sign. If I can have a minute or two extra.
Yeah, just one more minute.
Okay. So as a result, we're asking for a speed limit sign for Fairmont Avenue. Next. You have 4 or 5 of these speed limit signs that actually indicate your speed on Glen Oaks Avenue in the Glen Oaks Canyon area. Okay? Now, I know that a former council member lives there, and he pushed for this, which is great, but we deserve the same kind of thing for our neighborhood. And we've been asking Jano Bagdanian about these things for many months now, and every time we ask, he says, oh, don't worry, once this project gets built, I don't think you're going to have any problems. Speed limit signs are necessary for Norton, Gray Knoll, Zook, and Fairmont, 4 major streets that we're having complaints from our HOA members. So I don't see any reason why we should be denied simple traffic calming measures. Every time we call the Transportation Parking Department, the only thing that they want to offer us are humps and bumps. We don't want humps and bumps, because once you put humps and bumps in one street, traffic moves to the other street. Next, please. Another sign on Glen Oaks Canyon. Next. And one more. And again, you guys already have these no left-hand turn signs in Glendale. This is an island near Chevy Chase, and if I'm not mistaken, it's near Acacia. If I'm not mistaken, this was taken from there. Next. And again, LA, 3 to 7 p.m. restricted. This is on Los Feliz in an affluent neighborhood. So the precedence is already set. Next. And this is what we're trying to prevent. This picture was taken at Norton Avenue. This is a regular occurrence. We also had a dead cat recently. People are going 40, 45 miles an hour on Norton. which is not supposed to be more than 20 miles an hour, if I'm not mistaken. So animals are dying. The next picture that I want to prevent from showing you is a young kid being hit by a car because the city is refusing to give us a simple traffic speeding sign. That's what we're trying to prevent here. And it shouldn't take us coming in front of you to ask for a simple speed limit sign on Norton Avenue and other streets that I've just mentioned. With that, I'm going to close, and I'm hoping that at least 2 of you will support this thing to be agendized so our neighborhood can get some traffic calming measures. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'll close oral communications. Do you want to make any comment on or anything?
Mr. Chairman, a number of the issues Mr. Messi has raised as far as the speed limit signs, they have been ordered, their work order has been issued for the installation. We have a very small, limited crew right now that is working on a number of priorities, and so they will be installed. As far as the no left turn sign...
Excuse me, on the speed limit, are we talking about the electric signs or just the...
No, just the plain
Passive.
speed limit signs that says speed limit is 25.
Is Mr. Massey aware of that?
Yeah, that's what's underway as far as the work orders have been issued. One of the requests we received was no left turn sign, residents exempt, which that's what we said we can't do because California Vehicle Code does not have anything that says this is a resident that's not. So that was one of the reasons. The other reason is that if you make a restriction, it applies to everybody. So where does people who live on Norton go? We'll be happy to bring you an updated report on efforts or issues that have been raised in that neighborhood. We've always offered Mr. Masihi and the neighborhood to meet with them and look at all the entire area. By no means we're pushing for speed humps or bumps. If that's something they want and it qualifies, they want to have it, it will be brought back to the commission. So if the commission will allow us, we'll give you a report on what we've done or what we can do immediately. And if there's some issues that we cannot resolve and it will take some commission input, we'll bring it back to the commission for your consideration.
So you're saying you can do no left turns, but you can't
No, we
do
can
it
we can
for
put a we can
just
we can put the
residents,
no
all that kind of
left turn. I'll get it out there next week, but it will apply to everybody. So resident, non-resident, make a left turn, they get cited. There's no exemption.
Right.
That was one of the things that we said we can't put in no left turn with an exemption for the resident, and that's whenever you do that to a residential street, it applies to everyone.
Did the homeowners have a response to that request?
No, they haven't. So, but this, Mr. Messi is right. We have a lot of construction in that area, and the construction should be over in the next 2 months. The major part of the bridge construction should be over so that we can start truly open up the streets, get all the striping done. There's additional signs have to be installed on Fairmont. That would also be installed as part of the project. That's a construction requirement. Again, in addition to that, any other streets that were named, Mr. Messi named, we'll be happy to meet with the residents. We'll also encourage one of the commission members to meet with us to see what are the issues which we have done in the past when it's a traffic calming issue. But it's not only one street because the Pelanconi estates have a larger area. So we can look at all of those areas together so we're not only addressing Norton Street or Fairmont. If there are any other streets, I'd rather have them all together, take care of them all at once so that we can give them some relief. As they say they want to have the quality of life, we'll be happy to do that. So I'll bring back a status report on it while we're installing some of the signs that we promise we will do.
Very good.
Just a question for the speaker, if I may. In terms of the no left turn onto Norton, would you still want to have it even if there was no exemption for the local traffic?
We have to actually survey all the neighbors that live on Norton. About 3 or 4 homeowners are not Norton residents anymore because they have rented out their property. So I have to write a letter to them and ask their take on this issue. So that will take probably about two weeks for us to make a decision on that issue.
Okay, so it's something you need to take back.
Yes, but I'll be happy to send you by email pictures of similar signs that say local traffic exempt in Los Angeles County. I've seen them, and I can take a picture. So the precedence has already been set So for us to say, well, we cannot have that here in Glendale, I don't know. But you'll be the judge if you look at some of these things. These are, by the way, public streets. These are not private streets that have these signs. Public streets that say local residents exempt. I'll be happy to send pictures of that to you guys if you like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, again, just to follow up with that, we can put it up, we will not enforce it. Our police department is not a sanctioned vehicle code approved sign, will not enforce it, and cannot be enforced because you can't just pull somebody over and say, are you a resident? Or what if I'm a guest? Or what if I'm the sister or the brother of the resident? That creates a problem. We just, for synthetics, we just don't put in signs of that nature. However, that's what was our concern, is not to put in the sign unless we know the residents, not only on Norton, the other residents off of Norton also going to be impacted by it. And truly, as Mr. Massey mentioned, there's only one way to get in to Pelanconi residents coming from the north, and that is Norton. So it impacts the whole neighborhood. So if the entire community is aware of it, they're okay with it, we'll put in the sign, but we will not put in no left turn with exemption for residents. That would be my position. If council overrules or the commission overrules us, that's a different story, but that would be our staff recommendation.
If you want a member involved, I'd be happy to, because I drive these streets. I never make a left turn onto Norton, but I drive the streets, Fairmont and Norton as well.
I'd like to bring this, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, give you a status report, and then to your pleasure, we can go to the next step and determine, and with input from the Pelanconi estate, to what extent they would like us to be involved with them. And if a member of the commission, I would certainly like to have one, so that you're aware of what we can and what we can't do, and when we bring it back to you, you can make a decision with input from one of the commissioners.
And if you're doing that, I'd be interested in knowing what the other cities or county areas, what their view is on these sort of signs. That
certainly we will
do they
do that.
enforce them or not?
If there's a way, we will try, but at this point, we don't know.
And kind of seeing a theme here that carried over from last month's meeting when we were considering traffic calming measures on Altura. And we also had a gentleman speak at that meeting who was concerned regarding placement of speed limit signs or lack of speed limit signs. So when you do come back to us on this, I was hoping maybe we could have just a very brief discussion on what the criteria are for placement of speed limit signs. And one of the other things that is starting to come up is the issue, I guess, sort of piecemeal solutions, traffic calming measures that may displace problems onto other streets, and that only humps and bumps are sort of available in the toolbox of traffic calming measures that residents can initiate. So if my colleagues are interested, perhaps we could also maybe have some discussion on possibly expanding the scope of traffic calming measures that are available for citizens to initiate, something along those lines.
Mr. Chairman, our intention is to bring you the traffic calming guidelines. It's time to revisit the traffic calming guidelines, and based on what you've experienced, we've had some opportunities in some streets that would really had bad traffic issues, speeding issues, and we dealt with them. Now, as you start expanding, and as Commission expressed the concern that there is too many of these are coming up, and so we end up putting speed humps and lumps all over the place. And believe me, we're really, as I said in our last meeting, I want to say we fight tooth and nail with residents sometimes not to, make sure that they meet those given the existing thresholds. And we still get a lot of concern expressed to us about that. Oh, what if it's a little 100 cars a day less, or the speed limit is this much closer or higher or lower? So I think it's the time to bring the guidelines back to you. You can look at all the options. We can look at more of a regional, or not regional, but an area-wide traffic calming measures, so that by shifting the traffic from one street to another, we're not causing more problems than we try to solve. So that would be one of the next items it's on my list to bring to the commission.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. Okay. So let's move on. Item number 5, please.
Item 5 is information and update. At 5A is the Bikeway Master Plan presentation.
Mr. Mr. Chairman, if I may, the purpose of this presentation is we have a number of planning efforts that are currently underway. Our mobility plan, with our several different components, and our bikeway master plan is another one of our documents that needs to be updated in light of the fact there's pretty much a behavior change that is occurring. The gas prices are going up, and people starting to look at other modes of transportation, including riding a bike to work or to school and the like. So we wanted to bring the Commission at the beginning of our bicycle master planning effort, give you an overview of what we're planning to do, and then throughout the update of the master plan, get you involved in so we can get your input rather than finish a plan, a master plan, and bring it to you and give you one chance to look at it. So we'd like you to be involved part of the process. This slide essentially shows you part of our existing, which you received a copy of our bicycle master plan that currently exists. This number of years ago, we prepared the bicycle master. We never had one. And to the extent possible, we've tried to incorporate part of this master plan ideas, or whether it's in the phase 1 of the plan or the phase 2 of the plan, whenever we had street widenings or we had street resurfacing, if there was a class 2, which is a striped bike lane, we can go ahead and do it. Some of these has taken a number of years because we cannot just go and grind the striping on a street. For example, Glen Oaks, which was recently repaved, and we were able to actually do the restriping of Glen Oaks in order to put in the striped bike lanes that you see on Glen Oaks that exist today. That was about 8-9 years ago we planned to do it, but we couldn't just go and grind all those lane line striping in order to put in the bike lane. So that just recently got in, although it was planned a number of years ago. So as we go forward, in conjunction with our engineering department, we are looking at bicycle lanes that can be actually striped on the street, whether it's a class 1 or a class 2, or we are installing some of the newer ideas, as you can see as part of our presentation. Right now we have staff from different departments involved as are listed in the slide: Public Works, Engineering, our Planning Department, Redevelopment Agency, Police Department, Parks and Recreation. And as part of this effort, we like to create a Bicycle Advisory Committee. The Bicycle Advisory Committee will consist of our staff from the respective departments. We'd like to request 2 commission members to be part of the Bicycle Advisory Committee. To my right, Colleen Bogart, who's our Place Grant Coordinator, has been very active in helping us in our bicycle planning effort, promotion of bicycle facilities and bicycle programs. Colleen and a number of actual bicyclists who really have, they're out there and riding their bike every day, and they've been a very good resource for us in order to help us out from bring this plan together from a bicyclist standpoint. So they will be part of that too. We will make a list of the Bicycle Advisory Committee members. We will be working with them hand in hand as we develop the plan, get their input, bounce it off of them, looking at their ideas or where bicycle facilities are workable, infrastructure improvements that are necessary, and then put that as part of the plan. In addition, as shown in the second slide, we have retained the services of a bicycle consultant, Ryan Snyder, who has been working with the city as part of our Safe Route to School program, is very knowledgeable in that arena. In addition, for our technical staff that will be working with him to help us put together an updated bicycle master plan. So Ryan Snyder will be a key part of that Bicycle Advisory Committee as well, and basically putting the plan together. As I said, the Transportation Parking Commission, at the end of your presentation, if you wish to designate 2 commissioners, we'd like to know who they are so that I will also let you know about the level of effort, the number of meetings that will be involved as part of that. Our scope of the plan is, like we started with our previous bicycle master plan, is to have some workshops that we will involve the key interest groups, including homeowners, businesses, Glendale Community College, Glendale Unified School District. Invite people to participate in a community workshop to look at what we have currently, see what their needs are, and then we can build upon that, receive their input, and go forward with that. Put together objectives and purpose of the study, discuss that, look at some of the preliminary findings that we have in the existing bicycle facilities we have, and solicit their input, as I stated, as we go forward. Then we will have regular meetings with the Bicycle Advisory Committee on a periodic basis. Then once we develop the plan or parts of the plan, we will have another workshop to see if that is consistent with what people are expecting. Then we'll have some open houses with maps and plans to allow people to come in and look at the plan that has been developed. Again, solicit people that are not, solicit input from people that are not part of the advisory committee, but in general, they're interested in bicycles, use of bicycles throughout the city. Try to do an opinion survey to solicit more information from the community. And then and the next task will be to look at all our current plans, including our existing bicycle master plan, the mobility plan that was recently approved by the City Council. We have a Safe Route to School plan that we will present to you at our next meeting. Look at the Safe Route to School plan, see how the bicycle plan can integrate with the Safe Route to School plan, because that's one of our goals, is to get more kids riding their bicycle, but making sure that they can ride their bicycle in a safe manner, so the parents will actually allow them to ride their bicycle to school as they used to do years ago. Look at the circulation element, land use element, county-wide bicycle plan, other plans that are being developed by our neighboring cities, and pull them all together so there's a complete network as we go forward with that. There is an existing inventory of what we have out there, but we will also conduct another inventory to look at our existing routes, look at continuity of our routes, look at some of the thinking outside the box, some of our streets in the downtown area. Is there a way we can take a lane away and stripe bike lanes? Can we remove parking? That was been one of our challenges, is that, yes, we can add more bicycle lanes in the downtown area, similar to some of the major cities in the nation, but that takes a major effort in terms of removing on-street parking in some areas, because many of these streets we cannot widen the street anymore. As a result, either you have to remove the left-turn pockets or you have to remove the on-street parking in order to be able to stripe bicycle lanes that is protected from the through traffic. We have some ideas, some of these streets, and it will be a policy decision by the commission as well as the city council, because that's been one of our obstructions, so to speak, to put in more bicycle facilities in the city. Those are there are candidate streets that we would like to share with you, just do some cross-section and from an engineering standpoint tell you how it can be done and what would be the pros and cons of doing something like that. Next slide is but also look at the future land uses in the downtown, that's why we have planning department involved. We want to make sure also new development also takes into account that they should maybe put in some bicycle infrastructure, bicycle lockers or bicycle racks, and encourage bicycle program, maybe making a conditional development. They can get some credit for implementing some of these ideas as part of their development approval, and looking at some of the goals and policies and develop an action plan as part of that as well. Then we will put together, with the help from our consultant, the bikeway system and a network, and a phasing plan as to that would be tied to our capital improvement program. So as we widen street or paving streets, some of the streets that we know we can stripe bike lanes, and we have to change the striping of the street, we will be able to incorporate them in a timely manner. So if in next year, let's say one of these streets gets striped, resurfaced, we will tie that into the plan, so you know basically when these will be done and what time frame. Another area that Colin will give you a little bit more, we have a slide presentation just to kind of whet your appetite in terms of what are the things we've looked at, and I'm glad I think all of you have gone on to these bicycle tours that Colin arranged to see what some of the other cities have done and see where some of those ideas have application in Glendale, and we can incorporate them, whether they're bicycle boulevard or sharrows or traffic circles, part of a traffic calming program. Maybe we can use putting in bicycle facilities that would somewhat calm down the traffic as well. Those are some of the ideas. We'll show you some slide presentation of part of that. Other things, the bicycle amenities will be part of our, how do we link with transit? How do we make sure that at our transit stops we have facilities that can also tie into the bicycle facilities? We currently have bicycle rack on all our buses that are being used. How can we encourage that or enhance that further? That's part of our plan. Another key component of this is how do we create a safety program, safety education that will get people to ride their bicycle. They know how safe it is. By creating the infrastructure doesn't mean we build it, they will come. We have to also promote the bicycling throughout the city. So that will be part of that plan that we're developing. And then we will look at the facilities that we have engineered eventually or planned and try to assign some kind of a priority if there's a funding issue associated with that. Part of our effort would also look at the funding, which is the next slide, that identify the source of funding. Currently, we receive money from Transportation Development Act for installation, design, and construction of bicycle lanes and facilities. We'll let you know how much that funding is and how can we basically supplement that with other sources of funding, capital programs, or any other grant monies that we're able to apply for in order to implement the program that we're planning to do so. The next step will be basically to draft a staff report, a report that will be reviewed again by TPC. Then we will present that to the City Council after TPC review and recommendation. Once we get Council's input, then we will put together the final master plan, and then we will go ahead and through the implementation stage. At this point, the way it looks, once we get our agreement signed with our consultant, which we anticipate starting in July, we will start the plan and anticipate the draft to be done by the end of this year. So we have a fairly aggressive plan to move this program forward. One thing to mention that if there are facilities that as part of currently we're going to be paving some streets, and if we know there's going to be we can stripe a bicycle lane on that, we're not going to wait for this plan to be approved. We will let you know that this arterial, for example, I'll give you an example, Verdugo Road, up to the northern part of the city. There's a potential if we take it from 4 lanes to 2 lanes in the area where the volume of traffic is low. By taking a lane away, we will be able to strike the lane. We will not wait till the plan to be done because our engineering department already has designed that street, and we need to move forward with that. So it may take a commission action, council action to go forward with that before even the master plan is done, because otherwise we're not going to be holding the funding for construction of that facility until the bicycle master plan is done and complete. You have a copy of the bicycle master plan, as I said. You can review that, provide us any comments you may have along the way. At this point, that was just to give you the overview of the steps and tasks that are involved. I'd like to turn that over to Colin to give you a quick overview of the slides. We're going to go through them real quickly and kind of get your input. I know you have been to some of these streets like Long Beach or some of the other areas that have bicycle facilities, and get some input from you. And if there are certain areas that Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission would like us to incorporate in our scope, we will be happy to do that at this point.
Okay. Chairman Welch, Commissioners, good evening. My name is Colin Bogart. I'm with the LA County Bike Coalition, and Mr. Bogdanian asked me to put together some slides of examples of street treatments and facilities for bicycles. And quite a few of these will actually be familiar to you, as we've gathered a lot of these from recent visits both to Long Beach and to Berkeley. So for starters, bike lanes, this is what most people think of when they think of bike facilities on the road. This is Glen Oaks, Riverdale, and granted, this isn't in Glendale, this is on Foothill. We'll be seeing a section of Foothill this summer, I understand, in Glendale. And as Mr. Bagdanian indicated, of course, striping bike lanes requires enough space on the street, and sometimes there's a challenge in terms of space versus for lanes versus parking or versus travel lanes. Bicycle paths, these are separated off-road facilities, and I've got a couple pictures of a few paths in the city of Berkeley. This is one that runs along the BART line. This one's actually substandard. It's not as wide as it's officially supposed to be. I raised this one simply because the Parks Department is working on the Riverwalk project, which is going to be a multi-use path, both for bicyclists and pedestrians. So the potential for bike paths in Glendale does exist. And along that same line, I mentioned bike and pedestrian bridges. This is a bike pedestrian bridge that goes over Interstate 80 in Berkeley. It has a separate section for pedestrians on the right, and the bike lanes are on the left. This is something we visited when we were in Berkeley. More close to home, this is a bike ped bridge over the Biona Creek bike path in Culver City. Apparently this was more of a ready-made bridge. And again, I mention this because part of the Riverwalk project, they're doing a study for building a bridge across the LA River to the Griffith Park side, and there seems to be a lot of interest in that. Sharrows, officially called shared roadway markings. We've already implemented sharrows in 2 locations in Glendale. These 2 pictures were taken on Grandview, just north of Kenneth. We also have them on Stalker Street from Pacific to Louise. The original intent for sharrows was to guide cyclists to right outside what's called the door zone, so that if a motorist opening their car door opens their door, the cyclist won't be struck. But it also serves as a reminder that bicyclists are sharing the road with the road users, and can be a good enhancement for Class 3 routes throughout the city, along with other amenities that I will mention. These are sharrows on Gilman Street in Berkeley. Interestingly, this is sharrows painted in a parking lot at City Hall in Cedar Falls, Iowa, when I was visiting relatives last summer. So they're not using the door zone application as much as they are just using it for the shared roadway application. And this is a rendering of what Maple Street potentially would look like with sharrows as part of the Place Grant physical project, the Riverdale Maple bike pedestrian corridor that my project has been promoting. Then to step it up, we have the Green Lane sharrows down in Long Beach. This is 2nd Street in Belmont Shore. This is when they were being painted. And this is a photo taken from our first visit, first official visit to Long Beach. And these are photos. This is a photo taken from the second visit. This section of Belmont Shore in Long Beach sees somewhere on the order of 40,000 cars a day. On the weekends, it's bumper to bumper. So they decided they really needed to step up and do something beyond just the sharrows, which is why they put the green stripe in. Long Beach and Salt Lake City are the only cities in the country right now that have this. It's an experimental application, but something we might want to consider possibly here in the city of Glendale.
Green lane wider than a bike path? Than a bike lane?
The green lane, I believe the green lane actually is, it looks to me like it's your standard for bike lane, which is a minimum 5 feet. And that looks to me like it's a 5-foot width, but I'm not absolutely certain of that.
Narrower,
Pardon me?
The one at Glen Oaks, for instance, looks narrower than you're saying they're the same?
It's 5 foot. It's a 5 foot. That's your standard width. I'm not sure of the width on that, but I can find out for you. Bicycle boulevards. This is what we saw when we were in Berkeley. Essentially, Berkeley has a series of streets in which they had installed diverters to prevent cut-through traffic in the early 70s, and now they've overlaid a network of bike boulevards. They've essentially assigned them the name Bike Boulevard, and they've painted these large stencils on these streets. I mean, you can see this is like the size of your average car, this is an example of one of the nicer diverters that they had put in a neighborhood this street used to go through, and now the only way you can go through is if you're riding a bike or if you're an emergency vehicle. And the neighbors actually maintain all the trees and bushes in this particular location. And the bicycle boulevards are essentially a network throughout the city. They're on residential streets, and the cyclists can get just about anywhere they want to go via this network of bicycle boulevards. What is supplementing these bicycle boulevards are wayfinding signs, which tell the cyclists, gives them the cues as to where they're going or where they want to go. And they have certain streets where 2 bicycle boulevards intersect. The regular street signs have this purple designation as well that matches the wayfinding signs that they've installed throughout their network. In Glendale, we could do something similar to this potentially with Sharrows, for example, where you have a network of bikeways on residential streets supplemented with wayfinding signs, for example. This is a wayfinding sign in Portland. Portland's done a similar thing where they have networks of streets in residential areas that is primarily wayfinding signage and the ability to get across major streets. Bike signal detection, this is something that we also saw as part of the bike network. Basically, you place your bike over this symbol and it will trigger the light. This is key if you're riding a bike and there's no cars around. You don't have to wait for a car to show up to trip the light for you. The light will be tripped by the bicyclist. Protected bike lanes. This is something that's fairly new. It's following a European example. These are renderings of what they're planning on doing in Long Beach. This is 3rd Street. This is Broadway. And essentially what they're going to do is they're going to move the parking lane over and put the bike lane in between the parking and the curb, and they're removing a travel lane. So this is Broadway in the downtown area of Long Beach. This is 3rd Street in the downtown area and what they expect it to look like. My understanding is they're going to start work on this project this summer. And this is a photo that I just downloaded. This is an actual protected bike lane that's been installed in New York City. There's actually quite a few of these have been put in already, but this is one of those. And of course, there's challenges that come along with this in terms of how you handle crossings, driveways, intersections, and the like. But it seems to be the direction of things, at least for consideration. Bicycle parking. These are examples of a few of the bike racks installed in Glendale. This is at Adams Square. This is outside the main post office on Broadway. This is an example of bike parking in Long Beach. This is in front of a Pizza Hut, or not a Pizza Hut, but a pizza place. So they had a pizza-shaped rack. This is outside a coffee house, so it's a rack shaped like a coffee cup. They had guitars, surfboards, and whatnot. This is your more standard bike rack, but a series of them placed in an area of high use. This is in Portland, Oregon. This is outside City Hall at the city of Long Beach. You can't see it in this photo, but to the left there are also bike lockers. This is covered parking outside of BART station in Berkeley. And then these are bike lockers outside that same BART station in Berkeley. These were lockers that first come, first serve was the way these worked. You used a credit card to use these lockers. There's also bike parking facilities, attended bike parking. This is the bike station in Long Beach. This is actually a temporary location for them. They're building a brand new building on their transit mall in the not too distant future, but this is where they're located now on Broadway. Road diet. Mr. Bogdanian referenced this briefly. This is the idea where if you take some lanes out and add a turn pocket and are able to add a bike lane on either side. We've actually seen this happen in the city of Burbank just recently. Interestingly enough, on Verdugo in Burbank, they've done this. Similar situation where they had a street with no turn pocket, and the traffic was backing up anytime somebody wanted to turn left, so they eliminated a lane on each side and put in a bike lane and added a turn pocket in the center. Interesting thing to note when we had our pedestrian safety action plan, that the people leading that told us one of the other benefits, aside of the fact of adding a bike lane, is that this treatment, if applied correctly, helps to eliminate speeding. Particularly egregious speeding, because there's somebody in front of you and you can't go any faster. Yes, sir?
I think it also helps to eliminate rear-end collisions, because adding the center turn lane means that if someone wants to turn left into their driveway, they don't have to come to a complete stop in a travel lane to wait for a break in the opposing traffic while someone speeds up behind them.
Thank you. This is an example of an actual road diet applied. I'm sorry, I can't recall the name of the city where this was done. Interestingly, on this one, what they did in addition to eliminating the two travel lanes and adding bike lanes, you'll notice on the left they added diagonal parking, but they added it as back-in diagonal parking as opposed to head-in, which is suggested whenever you're putting in a bike lane in conjunction with diagonal parking. So just something worth considering. Yeah. Mini traffic circles. This is an example of a mini traffic circle that we saw in Berkeley. We actually saw a lot of these peppered throughout their bicycle boulevard network. This is a photo of just one of the ones that we saw. This is the traffic circle here in Glendale at Riverdale and Columbus.
And these, why do traffic circles help bicycles?
The idea behind it is that not only is it traffic calming in terms of slowing traffic down, and it's more comfortable to ride on streets where the traffic speeds aren't, the differential isn't so high. The other reason is that in an ideal situation, a traffic circle would eliminate the requirement for the bicyclist to stop. The one thing that I couldn't really take a picture of in the bicycle boulevards is that a lot of the stop signs along the bicycle boulevards were turned so that cross traffic on the bicycle boulevards had a stop sign while the traffic in the boulevard did not. And then the diverters would lead the traffic off. This is of a benefit for bicyclists because you don't lose your momentum. You don't have to stop and start constantly at your intersections. That's the idea behind it. But the traffic circle still helps to slow your traffic because they have to slow down to navigate around the circle. In this case, the traffic circle at Riverdale and Columbus has a four-way stop still in place. And the consideration for taking out a four-way stop is obviously one that needs to be taken very carefully. And then my last slide, this is just a rendering of a traffic circle potentially at Maple and Porter. Again, this is a proposed traffic circle on the Riverdale-Maple bike and pedestrian corridor as part of the Safe and Healthy Streets project. Again, an opportunity to add some traffic calming that instead of a hump or a lump, you have something that actually has some greenery, so it's a little nicer to look at than speed bumps, for example. And so it's something worth considering as a possibility. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
I believe we also have some folks in the audience that they are bicycle enthusiasts, and if they wished, I guess, to address the commission.
Yeah, I have
Encourage
two
that.
speaker cards. Does anybody else want to put in a speaker card? If the cards are right over there on the side, just put your name in there and bring them over here for us. So, so I'll go ahead and open a public hearing here, and we'll take people's comments. First speaker, Nancy Kent.
Nancy Kent, resident of Glendale. Back in 2006, there was a big effort to get community input for Glendale's long-range planning project. And I know that traffic congestion was either at the top or near the top of the list of what people wanted improved. And if we really want to reduce traffic and parking congestions, we'll develop a complete network of bike lanes so it's really safe to use bikes for transportation. Also, Glendale could dedicate some full lanes of our major streets to be shared by buses and bikes only, no cars. Not the whole street, but just one lane in each direction. And I'm glad to hear that a bike lane for Verdugo is being proposed, but I just would hope that you might consider a lane for buses and bikes to share there. I hope the people on this commission have seen the 1-hour DVD called Contested Streets that show the innovations that have already been done in Copenhagen and London and Paris. And I remember that DVD mentioned there was a lot of resistance by merchants before a busy street in Paris was changed to pedestrian use only. But after it was done, business at the shops on that street improved. So please give more consideration to pedestrians, bikes, and public transportation instead of staying with the old assumption that transportation by private car is the best use of every lane of our public streets. And also, the City Council just approved a project to redo all the street signs in Glendale, so I hope that the possibility of having these bicycle boulevards or whatever will be coordinated with that, so the new signs will show the bike routes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Kara Sergile.
Usually it gets quite butchered. My name's Kara Sergio, and first of all, I want to just acknowledge and thank Jono and Colin for all their efforts around the Safe Routes to School project. I'm a resident of Glendale and a mother of 2 little girls who attend R.D. White Elementary School. And about a year and a half ago, I formed at our school a pedestrian and traffic safety committee, and that then merged in with the Safe Routes to School program. So we've had a very active involvement with Safe Routes to School for now a solid school year under our belt. And just even since we've started those efforts, we have seen bicycling quadruple at our school. When we started over a year and a half ago, there were no bicycles on the bicycle rack, and as of this morning, there were 4 bicycles. So we have a much increased interest in bicycling from the children in our school, but along with that, valid concerns by parents about the safety of bicycling, and people sort of moving into this with trepidation. So I'm here to advocate for this updated bicycle plan, as I do believe that it will help with some of the traffic calming measures around our schools, specifically Verdugo Woodlands and Wilson, and just really want there to be much safer ways for our children to get to school, either by foot or on bicycle. That's all.
Next speaker, Ari Gross.
Good afternoon. My name is Ari Gross, Commission members, Chairman. Colin, hello. I am also a resident of the Verdugo Woodlands, and I'd like to speak in favor of this bike plan. I'm a very casual rider. My wife is a avid bicyclist, and she rides with our 3.5-year-old daughter on the bike, any place that she can and where it's safe. And so I can speak to my great concern about bicycle safety in Glendale, but also in particular in Verdugo Woodlands on North Verdugo Road. There really must be some traffic calming measures. It's posted at 35. Frequently, I'd say every other week for several days, we have Glendale PD running, speed traps, if you will. Not really traps, they're just out there, and no officer spends more than 3 to 5 minutes sitting, because there's constant speeding. It's just the kind of culture on that road. And I would urge the Transportation and Parking Commission to do whatever it can to calm down the traffic on Verdugo Road. Looking at the proposals, the idea of a road diet with 1 lane in each direction with a center turning lane and bike lane seems like it would be ideal. My daughter's 3.5 years old, and she could walk to Verdugo Woodlands or ride her bike without actually crossing a street. The sidewalk, unfortunately, is probably about 20 inches wide, 22 inches wide. And it's just not safe, particularly when cars are crashing into each other and occasionally ending up on the sidewalk. And I would very much like for her to be able to walk and ride her bike to elementary school in the near future. So I would urge you to really seriously consider making these changes. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Colin Rose.
Good evening. I just wanted to come up here to offer support for the bicycle plan.
Can you state your name for the record?
Oh, of course. My name is Colin Rose. I'm a resident of the Ross Moines area. I'd like to thank the council for taking up a topic that's progressive and healthy and responsible. And as a bicycle commuter myself, I commute down to USC every day. I'd like to mention that, Los Angeles has a lot of great areas for bicycling. They've got a great plan in the works right now to improve their bicycle plan. And what I really hope is that the City of Glendale can incorporate their plan with the City of Los Angeles, really make it a feasible thing to be able to commute from Glendale into Los Angeles in a safe way. So again, I just wanted to thank you for taking this up and offer my support for the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any speaker card to? Okay, so we'll close the public hearing. Gentlemen, comments, questions?
I would say let's do it.
The sooner the better.
And I'd throw my name into the hat to be on the advisory committee.
You would like to be on the advisory committee? Okay. And anybody else? Comments, questions? Are you asking us for commentary and
Mr. Chairman,
ideas?
if you wish, or, as I said, we will be, as we start getting the plan underway, we'll give you periodic updates. And as part of the advisory committee, you can get more involved in the development of the plan. And so, with Commissioner Fuad, if there's any, either one of the other commissioners is interested, we'll be happy to have two of you on the bicycle advisory committee. So.
Okay. I would assume a lot of the work that you did with all those community meetings, with the stuff you did with the place grant stuff, is feeding right into all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. All of the information collected from the Safe and Healthy Streets project is available for the city to utilize as part of the bike plan update. Absolutely.
Colin, I had a question about. We're focusing obviously on the bicycle master plan. How will the pedestrian issue kind of work into this? Will there be some sort of development of pedestrian safety concerns, like a plan, a sub-plan with it? Will it work? Obviously, not all bicyclist issues are the same as pedestrian issues. So is that going to be part of the plan, or is that going to be addressed?
The Safe and Healthy Streets plan is going to address some pedestrian issues, and I'm not sure where we're at with the pedestrian safety action plan that was initiated as part of the Berkeley grant.
The pedestrian safety action plan, we are, again, the primary focus of that starts with the schools. So we're implementing one part of that.
Okay.
Focusing on because there is grant funds to be had as part of that. The second part of it, we're putting together the next step that we have to take as part of the pedestrian safety action plan. What do we do in general in terms of pedestrian safety throughout the city? There's a committee that has been formed internally by staff in terms of public education as it relates to pedestrian safety, promotion, whether it's on the GTV6 or going actually to one of the biggest areas that we have a concern is with the seniors that have difficulty. We have a large number of accidents that involve the seniors trying to educate them in different languages. So we're putting together an action plan on that that's consistent with the pedestrian safety act.
Okay, so that would be a separate, because
these two will be separate because this document will be more geared toward
the pedestrian issue.
Bicycle.
Oh, I see, with the bicycle
plan. The pedestrian actions will be separated. However, wherever like intersections or signalized intersections where there is a combination of the pedestrian and bicyclist, we'll try to address them as well.
Okay, so there will be an opportunity as a commissioner, to participate in the development of any pedestrian action plan? Because I know with my history with Wendy Alfson and Jill Cooper, I'd like to continue that relationship that we had developed a while back, and be able to use it for the betterment of the city. Yeah. Okay.
There will be that.
And I'm sorry. One question to Colin on the side issue of the bus and bicyclist combo. What are your thoughts on that, on a lane?
I think it's perfectly fine. I've ridden parts of LA that have bus lanes that allow cyclists to ride there. It's definitely something that I would say in a lot of cases you'd want your more advanced riders. It's not necessarily something that personally, if I had a child, I would advise them to ride there per se. But it is a good solution because when the bus isn't there, you've got this huge lane to ride, so it's actually quite comfortable.
So this bicycle advisory committee, that's going to be the group that is leading this. Is that essentially how?
Essentially, we have a project manager, Fred Zorhavand, who's not here tonight, but he will be managing the project. I'll be involved. My assistant Tom Mitchell will be involved. Colin will be involved. We will do a lot of the technical work on terms of developing, where we think these bicycle plans can be implemented. We will then, the output of our work will be presented to the Bicycle Advisory Committee so that, they have something to see. And as we present that to them, we'll get input from them. As I said, there will be some outreach community meetings. We'll try to target people who ride bicycles. We will try to get in Glendale Community College, Glendale Unified School District representatives to come and see what would be their needs that we can address as part of this plan. And then we will develop the plan on a phase-by-phase basis until we get to the draft plan, which will look at the infrastructure, we'll look at where you'll see a map that is in here, that this map will be updated on. I would imagine in terms of a two-phase plan, one can be done immediately in the next 2 years, and one that can be done as streets have to be widened or resurfaced, and it will be done in a. So I'm looking at more of a long-term 5-year plan, but immediately next year, as soon as the plan is done, what are the things that we can do, including educational programs that we can try to promote bicycling and education in terms of bicycle safety, etc. That would be the.
And who else besides staff and the commissioners? If we get 2 commissioners on that,
we already have we have a number of staff from other departments: Parks and Recreation, Planning Department, Police Department, and then I like to get in the if you look at your bicycle master plan, in the last one, on the second page, actually, it lists the committee members that were involved in the plan. It's right on the second page. Involved the Glendale Community College, Unified School District, Glendale Homeowners Coordinating Council. We had a representative there. Representative of a bicycle shop. Glendale Galleria. We try to target some of the major developments or corporations in the city. Glendale Transportation Management Association, so we can bring in members of the Glendale Management Association, community residents, and that lists the number of the city staff. That we will have a complete list of that. If there's anybody else that is interested, that will be an open advisory committee to be included in there.
Well, we had some people who came out tonight to
express
their
definitely
views, so I'd love to be able to
people
include
that are willing to give their time. We'd
Right.
like to have them involved, definitely.
Right, and on that line, one of the comments made, I think it was by Mr. Rose, about coordination between cities, I think is really critical, because, I know, as having been a rider, that when things don't match up and link up, it's convoluted, and so the extent to which cooperation and planning can be done to link up what LA has done and what Burbank has done, et cetera, it would be very beneficial.
That was listed as one of our tasks, looking at our neighboring cities at least, and primarily LA County, Los Angeles, LA Metro, as far as their regional bicycle plans, see how we can tie into them. Yes, the last thing we want is have a bicycle lane that goes nowhere.
Right,
it just
exactly.
goes to our border and then doesn't tie to anything else. So.
And finally, the last thing would be, and this would be just out of sheer morbid curiosity, but this is a 15-year-old document, and I'd be curious to look at exactly, what was done of it and when, and like how long, how close we came to reaching the goals in the old plan document, and how on what time frame compared to the phase 1, phase 2 stuff that was in the plan from before. Just I think that it would help inform the next plan to have learned from what actually was accomplished.
Sure. As I said, for example, Glen Oaks was one of our only streets that we did without removing parking. We could actually stripe like a Class 2 bicycle lane. We had to wait till we get the funding for the entire segment of Glen Oaks.
It only took 15 years.
Yeah, and then these streets, the pavement for these streets last a good 10 to 15 years. So we had to almost see it that it's in a really bad shape before you get the funding. You built it into our capital improvement program to that. I definitely hope that we don't have to wait another 10 years to do some of the things. But I think our goal would also be to really think outside the box and bite the bullet and look at some of these streets where we really need an east-west, for example, bicycle facility south of 134, other than Glen Oaks, which is north of 134, to tie in all these north-south bicycle facilities, for example. And that could be Wilson Street, could be California. We only have...
My personal preference would be Chevy Chase. I mean, that is an ideal street for one of those diets, where you put a center turn lane, cut it down to 2 lanes, 1 lane in each direction, and then put bike paths.
So, with that, we will also let you know in terms of traffic impacts, of the volume of traffic that you will be impacting. We'll have to do traffic counts and show you, what happens when you squeeze it down from 2. If you're up to 5,000 cars a day, it's doable. Once you go above 5 to 10 to 15, then it becomes a real problem. So we have to look at the pros and cons and present to you those issues. So.
Hey, I'm also enthusiastically in favor of moving ahead with this with all practical speed. I think to some extent we're experiencing, I guess, what might be called a renaissance in bicycling in Southern California, not just here, but nationwide as well. And I've seen increases in the numbers of cyclists. And sitting behind this dais right now, I think you're looking at 4 bike riders, right? We've all been participating, I think, in some of the bike events along with Colin. And I think now is the time, and I think the momentum is building. I think we have a critical mass of people that want to make this happen, not only on this commission, but on the Glendale City Council. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing the improvements that will come out of this. I'm also in favor of one of the specific things mentioned, which is a road diet for Verdugo. I think we have very few choices for how to get from North Glendale to South Glendale, and Verdugo is sort of one of those critical areas that I think could benefit in the same way that Latuna Canyon has benefited by being put on a road diet.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, is there another commissioner who would like to join Commissioner Fott to be on the Bicycle Advisory Committee?
I was going to say, I'm willing to do that if nobody else does. If somebody else is really interested and wants to do it, by all means, that's fine. But if commitments prevent that or whatever, I'm happy to take that on. Unless somebody else really wants it.
I think you just volunteered.
Okay, then.
Okay. Thank you very much.
It would be me.
Okay. I think we're done with that. So let's move to the next item, please.
Item 6, Commission Staff Comments Updates.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to advise you that for the next commission meeting, we are going to present to you from the Planning Department our mobility plan coordinator will give you an update on what's underway currently on some of the components of the mobility plan. Again, that's part of bring you up to speed and get you involved in the beginning as we're developing some of these plans, including updating you on the efforts that have been already undertaken for the parking study that the Commission recommended to City Council for the auto dealer district in terms of what surveys and what we're doing with respect to that, looking at the parking ratios in the downtown area. That's an important factor. And as well as if everything goes well, I will also schedule Mr. Ryan Snyder, to give you a presentation on our Safe Route to School program. The first one that got approved and we received funding for it, and the second one that will include 6 more schools, which eventually we'd like to get that done at the same time we're doing the bicycle master plan, so there's some connection with that. So those 2 will be the items that will be scheduled for the Commission. I think that will occupy our next meeting. To receive your input as part of what we're doing right now, and then as the draft plans or staff reports that are being prepared, then we'll be bringing those back to you in September timeframe.
Okay. Anyone have any comments or announcements?
Okay. Well, I got a bunch here, so I'll try and get this out of the way quickly. First of all, I wanted to mention the Contested Streets DVD that Ms. Kent mentioned. I have a copy of that DVD. If any of my colleagues would like to borrow that, I would be happy to lend it. In addition to the discussion of how they've handled bicycle and pedestrian traffic in Copenhagen, there are also extensive sections on Paris and London. Paris, I believe, is one of the areas where they have the combined bike and bus lanes, and that's fairly extensive, I think. And there's a very interesting discussion about congestion pricing in London, actually charging people for having their cars in the downtown core during the busiest hours. So there's a lot of good information in that DVD. I would recommend it if you get a chance. Also wanted to mention that on May 1st, Colin led a historic neighborhood bike ride through some of the historic neighborhoods of Glendale. Had a really good turnout for that. I think I see some people in the audience who were on that bike ride as well. How many people did we have on that? Do you know?
We had about 42 riders
yes.
on the historic ride on May 1st.
Yeah. So it was a good turnout, and the gentlemen on either side of me were both there as well. And
so we had a quorum.
So we had to be very careful not to talk to each other about any commission business, having a quorum.
You just said get out of the way.
Yeah. So, and I have to tell you, those Sharrows on Grandview, I was huffing and puffing going uphill on Grandview, and that's not really a very big hill. So obviously I need some additional conditioning, since little kids were zooming by me and, other humiliating things like that. Yeah. I think I need the diet more than the road does, probably. The third thing I wanted to mention is that I attended Metro's pedestrian symposium on May 12th at the Metro boardroom. And that was another very interesting all-day symposium where we had a number of very good speakers. Ryan Snyder was, in fact, in the audience at that symposium, as was Mike Nilsson, the city's mobility planner. And there was a lot of good information presented, and I believe Metro has some of the information and presentations up on their website for anyone who's interested in the future of pedestrian mobility in Southern California. And there was some fairly high-level representation from Doug Failing and Art Leahy from the Metro Board were there. And there was probably several hundred people attending that. It was a good meeting. Also, I wanted to mention that yesterday's Los Angeles Times has an editorial about the 710 tunnel. And one of the items in that editorial says that the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments wants to see the project move forward, but powerful local politicians such as Aaron Najarian, mayor of Glendale and chairman of the MTA board, oppose it. And I would, first of all, like to thank Mayor Najarian for his opposition to this plan. The Metro board is going to be considering his amendment to how to move forward on this item this coming Thursday morning at the Metro board meeting, and I'm planning on being there. And I also wanted to congratulate Mayor Najarian for being called a powerful local politician by the Los Angeles Times. It's got to be true. Okay, so, item number 5. I had mentioned a couple meetings ago that I was going to be attending a UCLA extension class on recent innovations in parking management, and I forgot to bring the information with me last time, so I brought it with me this time for anyone who's interested. And the $350 registration fee goes up to $375 after June 8th, so have a couple weeks to get in for the cheap price. And last but not least, I just wanted to verify with Jono that to see if the GNS appeal is still scheduled for June 15th. And the reason I ask is that there was the City Council recently heard an appeal of a Planning Commission decision. And they were upset that nobody from the Planning Commission was there to answer their questions as to why they had made the decision they did. So my reasoning behind asking about this is I intend to be at that meeting in case council does have questions, just so the commission is represented.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Weissman, as I indicated, it is scheduled on June 15 right now. Staff report has been finalized, and we will, as soon as we release the staff report, we will be sending a copy of the staff report to council, to the commission, and Chairman Welsh has indicated he wished to be there. You'll be notified. As of right now, it's scheduled. It's on the rolling calendar. Unless it gets bumped, and if it does, I will send you an email, let you know ahead of time.
Yeah,
but
and
for now, it is
I
on the
plan to be
15th.
there. Okay. And that's everything I've got.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Anyone? Yes,
There's a...
Chairman Welch, Commissioners, I'd like to mention that this Wednesday night is the final event for Glendale Bike Month. We're going to be having a guest speaker. It'll be Charlie Gandy from the city of Long Beach, who's going to be coming and talking about what they're doing in Long Beach and how it fits into the bigger picture of sustainability and livable communities. And as of the last time I spoke with Mr. Gandy about this, he's actually going to come up earlier in the day, and he and I are going to travel around the city, take a few photos, and his goal is to incorporate some possible ideas for the city of Glendale into his presentation. So the presentation is free. It's open to the public. And it's going to be this Wednesday night at the Glendale Central Library in the auditorium starting at 7 p.m. And for those of you who've met him already, you know that he's a very interesting, insightful, funny person. And I think he's a great speaker. I think it's going to be a really interesting presentation on Wednesday night.
He was also one of the speakers at the Metro Pedestrian Symposium on May 12th, and he is very good. I would recommend seeing if you get a chance.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item, please.
Item 7 is adjournment.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Let's be adjourned.